people did start building again, but right afterwards, the banks aren't lending during that period.
Yeah. I mean, I worked for one. So,
Yeah.
I managed default. I worked at, GMAC ResCap. We were a top
Yep.
five originator and servicer. So, I was there when I saw Wall Street starting to buy up those foreclosed homes. But what you'd had before that, Ken, was a lot of speculation in the market.
Oh, for sure.
And in reality, since the 90s, that was occurring. And so if you look at average household size and what it used to be versus what it is now, very different. It
Yep.
was
It's a lot
around
smaller.
4, a lot smaller. And so I understand a lot of people that's the understanding because that is absolutely a fact. There was not building, but we had already overbuilt.
Yep.
And then those permits, essentially, so we've got to think about just kind of the demographics and the fact that we're not, birthing babies like we used to. The fact that most of our population gain over the last couple of years was, due to immigration. And so, what you can see out there right now, and this is why, for me personally, because I live that, I had a builder group that, stopped building. I mean, I live that whole thing that you're talking about. But what I could see based on just those census numbers about those vacant homes, all of this. So, to your point about why weren't they on the MLS, there's two reasons. One, the MLS is less relevant than most people understand now. There were people during COVID selling on Facebook, selling short term rentals on Facebook. They'd be gone in minutes. And, back then, Zellman was arguing as well that, like, the reason there were so few listings on MLS is because it was just all turning so very quickly. And so nobody could really keep up with what was going on. But if you take a picture of like San Diego, for instance, and you look at, if you go to Inside Airbnb, you can see how many short-term rentals they completely took over that market. And so you have to look at many of these markets have very low owner occupancy. And what they did, like Austin, San Diego, others, is that you just had this rampant speculation on short-term rental in Nashville. And so that's where a lot of this inventory is sitting. And as we've started to see travel be impacted and kind of enter a downturn, you're seeing more and more motivated listing of those short-term rentals. And we're going to just continue to see that while at the same time, the boomers will be aging out. We'll lose 15.6 million between now and 2035 and another 25 million. And they own the majority of the homes. And, Charles Schwab has done a study. It said that, for people when children inherit the homes, they sell 70% of the time. And what I'm starting to watch undercover in a lot of these markets is homes where the owners have deceased is increasing significantly. And so you're going to have those homes coming onto market. Their kids can't afford a lot of them. I'm helping some folks like that right now. And so I think that there's that. And then because the math does look so clear, right? Because when you're just looking at building, but not necessarily when you look at kind of what housing became, and it became about, investing. It became about, a lot of the boomers are doing that long-term rental. And so now when you look structurally on how many people do we have more housing that we need. And, so what I was saying is I went out on the road because it was impossible to try and convince people of this because of that experience that folks had after the GFC, because there had not been building. But what you're seeing all over the country now is that, the nationals go building, they went crazy in many of these markets. And then the local regionals came in and did the same thing. And the two groups don't really talk to each other. And then, secondly, my point that I was saying to you is that I would look at permits in Austin, for instance, and then I would go and look at what was under construction, and it wouldn't match at all. And so we're missing a good deal of that inventory, again, because some of it is in unincorporated areas where you don't have to file permits. But the other thing I'll quickly say is on the MLS, in 2015 at their national conference, NAR did a study talking about private listings and how this was all the rage and it was stealing their market share. And what I have definitely noticed is that there are more private listings. There was a study done in Austin that almost 50% of transactions happen off the MLS. And so I think that we're looking back and we're saying, okay, the MLS then, the MLS now. Well, social media has really changed the way that we buy and sell homes. And NAR's not going to talk about it because they don't want to admit it. But this is definitely happening out there, and a lot of people are operating outside of the MLS. So I think that's one reason why you didn't see all that inventory.
Let's start with Ken. Ken, when we're focusing on sellers today versus sellers in 2008, how do you think that plays into what could happen with the housing market?
Well, in 2008, the seller did not have any equity. I think that's the big issue. So now I'm generalizing, of course, because some certainly did, but those, obviously, if you have equity, you don't show up as a foreclosure. I mean, you use the equity to pay your debt, and so the bank doesn't take a write down or anything. Like it's like it's a savings account. So that's one huge thing. We did have a run up in prices, even from early pandemic to now. I think we went up $100,000. We're still up over 400 on the average. And also in 2008, the water level went down across the whole country. The Market Watch just did a study for 2025 of the top 100 cities in the U.S. 22 went down and 78 went up in last year. So to me, in 2008, that was not the case. In 2008, everything just free fell because, of what happened then. So, and so there was this big shift of, from home ownership over to the rental side of the equation. And also, don't forget, we were at 69% home ownership. Okay, that put that, and I'm in the rental space, so that put 31% in the rental side of the equation. So every 1% tick back to, let's call it 65, as I think where we're at today, is millions of people.